Right, so tell me who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
So, my name is Akeem Shannon. I'm the founder of a company called Flipstick. It's a phone accessory brand that allows you to stick or mount your phone to virtually any flat surface. So you can do hands-free pictures, videos, watch Netflix and YouTube hands-free, but also create TikToks and Instagram Reels hands-free as well too.
What was the spiritual awakening that you had?
And my uncle has sent me a book. He sent me a book called Speaking with Angels. Man, that night I could not sleep. And I wake up in the middle of the night. I hear this screaming, and it's 7 4 7 4 7 4. And I'm like, what? You know, me being a millennial, I get on the internet and I type in 747. I'm like, what the hell is this? Is a Boeing 747 gonna crash into my apartment? What's going on? And I type in 747, and the autocomplete is angel number. Now I'm really freaked out. Like, what the fuck is an angel number? I've never heard of this. And I remember hearing a voice that saying, "You hate me because people have told you that I hate you, but you never asked me."
Right, so tell me who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yeah, man. So my name is Akeem Shannon. I'm the founder of a company called Flipstick. It's a phone accessory brand that allows you to stick or mount your phone to virtually any flat surface. So you can do hands-free pictures, videos, watch Netflix and YouTube hands-free, but also create TikToks and Instagram Reels hands-free as well too. And yeah, man, I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship after a career in sales and dropping out of college and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's been an incredible journey since then, and one that really the catalyst for was having a spiritual awakening at the age of 22, and it just set me on a entirely different trajectory in life.
And what was the spiritual awakening that you had?
Yeah, so at age 22, to back up a little bit, I had dropped out of college when I was 19. I had a full scholarship to go to university, and I lose my scholarship. And I had to come home, and I was devastated. I went to a high school where a lot of kids went to very prestigious schools, and I just felt like an absolute failure. And so I come home and I have to get a job, but I make myself this promise that by the time my friends graduate from college, I want to be making at least as much as the average college graduate. And so I start working at a retail store called Sprint here in the US. T-Mobile owns them now, cell phone accessory store. And I'm selling cell phones. I'm doing pretty well, making some money. Uh, Still not feeling great about myself, but I'm doing better. I upgraded from the bus to a car. I'm feeling a little bit better. And I'm leaving that job and going and working in a call center for Verizon, another cell phone. And I get to Verizon and I end up becoming the number one sales rep in the entire company. Right. I win this competition called Rockstar, which was this huge pitch competition that they had. I got to go down to Miami at the Fountain Blue Hotel, one of those fabulous hotels in Miami. And I win this big competition and meet these celebrities. And it was just a great experience, right? And this validation, like, wow, I've truly recovered. And so a couple of months after this rock star competition, it's Thanksgiving, and my mom had gone out of town. I was house sitting for my uncle, and I'm alone, and I'm watching a Liam Neeson movie. And Liam Neeson is talking about, he's like, when you die, it's not your life that flashes before your eyes, but it's your remembering of all the regrets that you have. And I got this overwhelming just sense of anxiety. And I never felt anxiety like that before. And I didn't even know what it was from. And that whole night, I'm just like, what's wrong with me? And I remember thinking I never contemplated suicide in my life. Honestly, most people who committed suicide, I thought they were weak. I was like, how could you do that to people? And in that moment, that night, I was like, man, I don't know what's going on with me, but if I felt the way I feel right now for 10 years straight, I'd probably kill myself too. This hurts, and I don't know why. So I wake up the next morning, and I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, that was a weird night. And about 30 seconds after waking up, boom, it hits me again. The anxiety just churning in my stomach. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? And this continues for weeks, right? It got so bad, I was having insomnia. I remember I didn't sleep for about 10 days straight, not 1 ounce of sleep. I thought I was dying. Like, I thought I was in Fight Club. Like, it was just one of those things where I didn't know what was happening with my body. And remember my boss, who was Canadian, uh, he had recently had a mental breakdown because his father had come down with cancer suddenly. He was in the hospital and he had to leave work. And he told me, he looked at me and he's like, Akeem, you're not looking like the rock star. You're not looking like the Verizon rock star right now. I think you should go see my therapist. And so I went to go see the therapist. Base was just like, oh, I'm stressed at work. No big deal. Maybe I need some time off. Left. And then a few weeks later goes by, and he's like, no, Akeem, you really need to take some time off. And so I end up checking myself into this mental hospital, and they give me all of these drugs. And these are hard drugs, right? These are like Seroquel, very heavy mood stabilizer, lithium, something good for people with bipolar disorder. And I'm not feeling good, so I take the drugs. But secretly, I know what the problem is. And I tell the nurse at the hospital, I was like, honestly, I don't think I need all these drugs. She's like, oh, no, you need to take these as prescribed, or you're going to have to go back to work, because we were a union operation. And if I didn't go to the hospital, then I had to go back to work. That was the 2 options. And so I told her, I said, I really think the issue is that, I'm gay and no one knows. I've never told a soul. And my parents don't know. And I think I can't live with it anymore. I can't live with the secret anymore. It's literally killing me now. And so I told the nurse, it was my dad's birthday. I told the nurse at the hospital, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to tell my dad today it's his birthday. And she's like, are you sure that's a good idea? I said, listen, lady, I've lived with this for 22 years. Okay. It's today. And so that day I ended up coming out to my parents, and I felt much better. And it was, don't get me wrong, it was tough. I come from a very Christian family. My mom was sobbing. It took years for us to come through that stronger on the other side. But man, it was this huge weight that lifted off of me. But I was still taking these drugs. And I remember a few months afterwards, I say, you know what? I don't think I need these. Like, I feel like I'm coming into myself. I don't need these drugs anymore. At this time, I still wasn't very spiritual, didn't believe in God, the universe, didn't know any of that stuff. And I quit taking the drugs one morning. And when I tell you the anxiety I had when I stopped taking those drugs was insurmountable. And that's when I first realized, I said, oh my God, I'm dependent on these drugs. So in a few months, and my body's literally dependent on it. And in that moment, I was like, I don't want to live dependent on anything. And so I quit cold turkey. And that was a tough night. But that night, and it was so tough, I was like, I need some weed. So I went and got some weed. I was like, I got to get something. I got to give me some marijuana or something. This is hard. And so I'm sitting there in my house, anxiety, smoke some weed, definitely made the anxiety worse. Terrible idea. And my uncle has sent me a book. He sent me a book called Speaking with Angels. And I didn't believe in angels. I'm like, I'm not reading this book. But I did read the back cover of the book. And the book was like, angels can be anything. They can be a song coming on the radio and you need to hear the lyrics. Or it can be your lights flickering in your room. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. Toss it to the side. So here I am in all this anxiety, having this crisis moment. And all of a sudden, my lights, boom, they all shut off. And I'm looking around. I'm like, that's weird. I look outside. All the lights on the street are on. All the neighbors' lights are on. But my lights are off. I go over to the light switch. I flick it off. It was on. I flicked it off. Said, okay. Flicked it back on. All the lights come back on again. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. And so then, and now I'm real freaked out. I'm like, oh, what's going on with me? And man, that night, I could not sleep. And I wake up in the middle of the night. I hear this screaming, and it's 7, 4, 7, 4, 7, 4. And I'm like, what? Now I'm really freaked out. I'm like, man, maybe I should start taking these drugs again. I'm losing it. And me being a millennial, I get on the internet, I type in 747. I'm like, what the hell is this? Is a Boeing 747 going to crash into my apartment? What's going on? And I type in 747, and the autocomplete is angel number. Now I'm really freaked out. I'm like, what the fuck is an angel number? I've never heard of this. So I look at it, and the blog was talking about how it's like, hey, you're facing a transition in your life, and you want to believe in something that you never believed in before, and you want to head in a new direction that you've never had in before. And this is your angels telling you you're headed in the right direction. And I'm like, whoa, this is weird. And so I'm sitting there at night, and I'm thinking about this, my life. And I just remember hearing a voice saying, because at the time, I didn't believe in anything, because I was like, well, I don't believe in God because, if God hates gays and I'm gay, well, then I hate God. Me and him just ain't cool. And I remember hearing a voice saying, you hate me because people have told you that I hate you, but you never asked me. And man, that set me on a trajectory that was unbelievable. And I didn't feel like church was the right thing for me, but I knew that there was something more to life than going through the motions. And a few months later, I won another award at work. I got a check for like $12,000 because I was like a top 1.1% or whatever of the company. And I remember my friend looked at me, who was my coworker, Brittany. I don't know, friend may be a strong word, but Brittany looked at me, and she just had, with an attitude, was like, you don't look like someone who just got a $12,000 check. And I realized I wasn't even smiling. And I'm like, what is going on? So I quit. And during that time of my life, man, I just started diving deep. I remember I watched the Secret, and man, changed everything. I was like, I gotta leave this job. There's something bigger meant for me. Like, I gotta follow this path. And then I read Think and Grow Rich. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is not just a spiritual thing. This is a life thing. This is a business thing. The titans of industry know about The Secret. Like, these aren't people that are religious. This is not voodoo. Like, this is real. And so I ended up quitting. And at the time, I wanted to start a business, and I got started on it. But I was still afraid, still afraid to really dive in fully. And I invested a few $1,000s into it. I had saved up a lot of money over the past few years. But as soon as I got a phone call from another corporation, it was Square, the guys who make Cash App. They were like, hey, we need a good sales rep. We see you're available. We'd love you to come work for us. I give up on my dream. And they're like, you can't have a business and work here. Like, you got to choose. And I always wanted to work for a tech company. So I went, worked there. It was a great job. But about 2 years into it, I felt the same way I felt at Verizon. I'm like, what's going on? I'm working this great job. I got a limited vacation, catered lunches every day. Like, I can't wish for a better job. Why am I not fulfilled? And so I went to my boss, and I was like, I said, look, I can't do this anymore. I got to go chase my own dreams. Like, I'm not making sales is not enough for me anymore. And he's like, okay, Akeem, I understand. I support you. He's like, I don't want you to go out and be a bum. So he gave me a book, and that book was called The Alchemist. And I'm sure a lot of your readers have probably read The Alchemist, but I had never read it. And when he gave it to me, I still didn't read the book, because I was like, I think Tom doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not reading this damn book. This guy's in Brazil. I'm not reading this book. So, I go and start a marketing business. I'm doing some marketing. And my mom sends me a random video. She sends me a random video. She doesn't even know I quit my job. She just sends me a video. It was Oprah. And Oprah was interviewing Pharrell, Grammy award-winning music producer. And she's like, Pharrell, can you just tell the audience what is a book that just changed your life? That just puts you on this trajectory to become who you were meant to be. And he's like, Oprah, the book that really changed my life was The Alchemist. And I'm like, oh, I have that book. So I get the book. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh man, what is this book about? I should really read this thing. Now, I didn't read the book. I was like, oh, in the moment I wanted to read it, but it just never happened. And so I keep moving through life. I'm like, oh, I'll read it one day. Not really loving doing the marketing thing for people. And then I hear about the book again. And this time it's on the New York Times bestseller list again. I'm like, isn't this book like 30 years old? Why is it on the bestseller list again? Why are people still reading this book? Now, I should have read the book then. Didn't read the book. And so then I move into a new apartment. And I had, you're moving boxes everywhere, stuff's chaotic. And at this time in my life, even though I had discovered that spirituality, I wasn't practicing. No meditation was happening. I was very in and out of things. And I remember I was moving, and my boss had given me this beautiful copy of The Alchemist. It was hardback. It had all these, decorations on it. It had illustrations inside of it. It was a really, really nice quality copy. And as I'm looking at my counter in my new apartment, I see that there is a book on the counter. It's not The Alchemist, not this hardback book, but it's this tattered paperback book. I walk over to the counter. I'm like, what is this? And it's The Alchemist. But it's not the book my boss had given me. It's a totally different book. And it said $2.99 on it. It said 15 on it. Was the date on the sticker that had the price tag. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, have I always owned this book and never knew I owned this book? Where did this book come from? I asked my buddy who was helping me move. I'm like, did you place this book there? I'm kind of freaked out again. And I had that feeling like when those angel numbers hit me. And I'm like, what is going on with this book? Like, it's like chasing me down. And I sat down, I read it cover to cover. For those who don't know, it's about this boy who goes on this journey to find his treasure. And in his early stages, he meets this wise man, this king, that tells him about omens and about signs from the universe. And about if he just follows the omens and the signs, he'll reach his treasure. And when I read that book, man, it put me into a mindset that I was like, it's time for me to find my treasure. And it was with that mindset that I get a phone call from my uncle, who's an engineer at NASA. He tells me about a project he's working on where he was using this adhesive that's based off the feet of geckos that NASA invented in the 70s, and how it could stick to anything, and it's washable and reusable. And I had recently mounted my TV on the wall because I had just moved. And I just thought to myself, I said, well, I may not be able to mount a TV, but a little tiny TV, that I could mount. And that's where the idea for the Flipstick was born. And man, it has taken me on an absolutely insane journey of manifestation where I have just, I'll let you ask a couple questions, but it has been truly an extraordinary journey. And it all really started with the changing of my mindset and realizing like, hey, there are omens, there are signs out there that are waiting. They've always been there. You just haven't been paying attention. And now that you are, anything is possible. And yeah, man, that's how my journey of Flipstick began, and it's been a wild one.
So you say that you were on the medication, right, for the anxiety, and then you thought, actually, it might be because I'm gay, right? So then you come out to your parents, you're still on the meds, and then you think everything's okay, and then you get another job at Square, but you still got the anxiety. So looking back, do you think that anxiety was actually because you hadn't come out to your parents yet, or not? Because you said you had that anxiety again later, or is it just simply this journey of unfolding emotions as they come, and you get to one part and you think that's it, then you realize, oh, it's not it, and then you keep going forward and you realize that's it, and then it's not it, and it's just you cleansing your soul, getting out all this emotion stuff you've kept inside from a very early age. And there's so much to unravel that it's a mixture of being told what to do, working for a job, being gay, not coming out, not having that conversation with God. We just have to have it. It's all these layers of fuck, I've just got to undo all these knots. And then you realize it wasn't individual knots, it was the whole rope that was knotted, right? Is that right?
Wow. That is such a beautiful way to say it. It's so true. I've never even thought of it that way, but you're right, because like there was a huge knot at the beginning, right? And without untying that knot, no other progression could ever happen. And so once I went through that first one, I'm feeling better, but then, the universe is like, great, I've gotten you past that, but you're still in this chapter and I need you to move to the next one. And then when I move to the next chapter, it's like, great, now that chapter is done. I need you to move to the next chapter. And what I found in my life is that, it starts with a whisper, right? It's a whisper. And then it's a feeling. And then it's a voice. And then it's a yell. And then it's tragedy and it's storms. And it's like, get to the next step. And, I think that the universe has a way, or God or whatever people's belief system is, like, has a way to say, like, it's time for next. It's time for you to keep going, because there's nothing worse than stagnation and being still and giving up as you made it halfway down the road, and then you just park and you stop. And I think that whenever I get to a point where I'm parked once again, I start feeling that feeling. And it's very interesting because, in a moment, for a while, you're happy, you're excited, it's great. But then you're like, well, this is not, something's different now. And that's usually a sign that it means like, okay, you've gotten complacent here. This was meant for you while it was, but now it's time to move on. And, looking back on The Alchemist, that's exactly what happened in the story, right? There's many times where he stayed in the same place for quite some time until he was forced to move again. And remember, like, your treasure's still out there. You need to keep going, because we all know it's at the end of the day, it's not really about the treasure. It's about the journey. And if you stop along your journey, something's got to get you going again. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on. Like, whenever I had reached a plateau where I was at and I wasn't fulfilled, then I get that feeling like, okay, that anxiety comes back, depression may come back. I'm not feeling great anymore. And it's like, okay, yep, now let's keep going. And I think for a lot of people, it's scary. It's always, people want to feel comfortable. Life isn't always about being comfortable. Sometimes it's uncomfortable when you take that first step. But man, once you start taking it, it feels great. When you're walking in your purpose and things are, magic starts happening to you. It's incredible. And I actually am very interested in knowing about your journey, with your Tourette's, and what made you make that decision to say, you know what, I don't need this medicine anymore. I'm going to do it without it.
It's a very similar, almost identical story with how it unfolded. Being at school with the school's basically a job. I'm not happy here, learning all this nonsense that I'm being told to learn. I'm trying to get there, but I don't know where there is. I just want to get out. Feeling sick, anxiety, nervous, depression, whatever. I leave school. I'm still on medication for Tourette's. Now, I've got so many answered questions in my brain, right? Too many thoughts. So when I used to think, I used to twitch because it's my brain stimulating other facial muscles. I learned the secret. Someone told me the secret, and that led to the Alchemist book and Think and Grow Rich and all that. It's the usual pattern. The Oprah Winfrey videos, and Jim Carrey, £20 million check on the wall. And it's like, fucking hell, all this is here. It was always here. And so I came cold turkey off the medication for Tourette's. My light started to flicker on and off. I started speaking to my grandma's ghost, equivalent to God. Mac used to turn on, lights used to flicker. Yeah, all this type of shit.
I didn't even bring that. Wow.
Tell me your stories about that.
Yo, so I can't believe you just said that. So that night when I heard these angel numbers, right? And I start to hear God that night, the first thought I had was about my dead grandmother. And see, my grandmother, I remember I used to always think, like, I was like, man, my grandmother, when she was alive, knew that I was gay, she'd be so disappointed in me. I used to always think about that. And I'm like, now that she's dead, she probably knows. And she's probably angry at me. And I remember thinking, like, and that night, it was like my grandmother was like, I love you just the way you are. Wow, that is so, man, that is incredible. Did you say that?
Yeah, so I was speaking to her like for a year straight, and basically my grandma was my unconscious mind. So you know how you're following the voice in your head guiding you? Google 717, wake up, look at the clock. You're following the voice, which is basically you're following your energy, and your energy is supposed to be over there in America, for example, and yet you're in Poland and you're trying to find your way to America. So if you keep following the voice, you get there. If you keep trusting the intuition, you get there. If you keep undoing the knots, you get there. If you keep going through this feeling of something feels wrong, find out why, unblock it and keep going, you get there. And basically there is being whole. It's having nothing inside yourself that you haven't been free of or haven't released. There's no secrets, there's no lies, there's nothing you're keeping in. You told everyone how you feel about them, you paid your debts back, you've got money back over there, you've told people what you really think about them, you've told people that you fancy and love, actually I love you. And so even though it might not go anywhere, you've got it out your system. So find people that you wish you told your feelings for, you get it out of your system, you realize they had the same thing. So you kind of got this closure. All the bullies you had growing up, you forgive them, closure. You reach out and they say, I'm sorry to you, closure. And it's like all these things that made us go inside and store negative energy. There's millions of events inside us, right? Say your nan saying you can't be gay, that's a negative thing that hurts you. The person at school saying this, negative thing that hurts you. And all these things are what I call knots in a rope. And all we're doing is going one by one through the rope, undoing the knots. And like you, I was following the angel numbers. 9/11 was on my clock, and I'd go out and I'd see 9/11 on a number plate, and it was like, wow, what the fuck is going on? And you really think like, holy shit, I'm thinking of numbers and people, and they're showing up, and you're waking up exactly 8:23 when you said you wanted to, and it's like, what is going on, right? And I think to myself, was I feeling what it feels like to be off medication? Or can I actually get back to that energy frequency? Because since then, I've never got back to it. And you could say when you do coke for the first time, you're never going to have that first experience. So is it that our body gets used to this high and that we're chasing that feeling we got, but really that's just our body going from a negative energy to a positive energy? Or can you keep raising your energy even higher and become aware of the levels? Because I haven't been able to get back to that point. So I'm thinking I came off the meds, which I've been on for so long. Was I just living in such a negative charged body that when I became off them, it felt like a high, but really that's just the norm.
Wow. Yeah. You know, I think that for me, I definitely, you know, I'm not a perfect practitioner. None of us are. But I feel like, yeah, for me, it was very just supercharged, you know, like in that first moment and that awakening. And I don't know if it's that. I think it is, you know, your body feeling it for the first time. And like you said, it's that high that's super high. But I will say there's still been moments in my life where I've been that just vibrationally just radiant a few other times. And I'll tell a story. One of those times in my life. So, you know, I start this company Flipstick, right? And it wasn't going great, right? So I wasn't making money on the website. So I start selling them in our local mall. And I do really well, right? Like we do about $30,000 in sales in 2 months. Killed it. We'd only made 15 grand in the first 8 months. And then we made 30 grand in 2 months. So I'm like, okay, I got this. So I go and apply for Shark Tank. Are you familiar with Shark Tank?
Yeah.
So I go and apply for Shark Tank, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get on the show. When 40,000 people apply every year, they get past the first round, right? Down to like 10,000. You know, then I get past second round, down to like 500. They get down past that round, down to like the final 200. They got to get it from 200 to 120. Producer calls me up. It's like, hey, you got really far in the process. You know, we only have about 2 people. We were at about 80, but, you know, we feel pretty good. You know, if we don't decide to go with you, we'll let you know. But, you know, you'll be hearing from us soon. I said, great. And then I get a phone call that I'm not going to be on the show. And I'm just like, huh? I thought my vibrations were right. I thought I was doing the right thing. Hey, what's going on? I should have never read that book, The Alchemist.
I read The Secret. You said you can attract anything.
Yeah, like what's going on here? And all my eggs were in one basket. I had no plan B. I'm like, I'm going to be on Shark Tank. So this thing doesn't happen to me. So first I'm sad for a few days. Then I'm like, okay, I got to figure something else out. And I end up getting invited to go to the Super Bowl. We give away flipsticks at that event. And then, you know, I end up in LA at the BET Awards, and I meet a couple people there. And so eventually a whole bunch of circumstances that I won't get into end up coming to me, realizing there's this event called the Revolt Summit. Never had heard of it. And it was by a big time rapper, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy Combs. And, you know, I'm like, okay, like I need to go to this event. And, you know, this is a conference for people who want to get in the music industry, you know, entertainment industry. I'm trying to sell a phone accessory, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. but I just knew like I needed to be there. I could just feel it calling to me. And so they had a pitch competition. I was going to sign up for the pitch competition. I bought my ticket to go. And then I found out the pitch competition's closed. But for whatever reason, that time in my life, man, I just knew this was it. And so instead of doing the music competition, there was instead of doing the pitch competition, there was a music competition to win a record deal. So I said, well, I took music appreciation in high school. I'm just going to enter the music competition, and I'm going to write a rap, and I'll rap the pitch for my business, and that's how I'll get to pitch my business. So I write the rap, go down to Atlanta, get to the conference, and I do my rap, and the judges eat it up. They love it. They're like, did you just pitch us your business inside the rap? I was like, yes, I did. And they love it. They put me in the top 5. And I'm like, dude, I'm about to get on stage. DJ Khaled is in there. All these guys are in here, and I'm about to be able to pitch everybody. And then I get, they pulled me aside and they're like, Akeem, we have to disqualify you because you're not actually a rapper. You're trying to pitch your business. And I'm like, they're like, we're trying to give away a record deal. I was like, what's the difference between giving away a business deal and a record deal? To me, those are the same things. They didn't agree. So they disqualified me. But I'm still like, man, my mom had been sending me this woman, Abraham Hicks. And I'm just listening to her. And she's just talking about how you can attract, she was part of the law of attraction. And I'm listening to her, and she's like, as you move through your day, you're going to face this friction. You're going to face, things that seem like contrast. They seem wrong, but they're actually telling you you're on the right path. And don't believe that it's stopping you. So I'm like, you know what? This is just contrast. Like, I'm meant to be in this space, and I'm going to make it happen. And so during the comedy show, which was right before the final of the music competition, sitting in the front row, and I'm racking my brain. I'm like, this event is for me. I know I'm meant to be here. And something inside of me was like, you got to stand up. So I stand up. And it's like, put your hands up. I put my hands up. I got my product in my hand. I'm just holding it up in the front row, standing up. The comedian looks at me in very colorful language. He's like, bro, what are you trying to sell me, man? And I go in full pitch mode. I'm like, this is the Flipstick. It lets you stick your phone anywhere. You can wash it. You can clean it. You can make TikTok videos. And he looks at me and he's like, I just got one question for you. I'm like, what? He's like, will it stick to my girl's ass? Because if it will, I'll buy 50 of them right now. The crowd goes nuts. They start laughing. And eventually everyone starts rushing the stage. They're trying to pitch their business. They're trying to show their product off. And this kid gets up to do a freestyle. And I'm like, yo, wait a minute. I got to rap. And they're like, oh, that's the Flipstick guy. You already derailed the whole comedy show. Now you want to get on the stage and rap? I said, yes, I do. And he lets me on stage. I perform the rap. The crowd loves it. And the same woman who disqualified me from the competition runs up to me and is like, you got to come backstage. You got to meet Puff. You got to meet DJ Khaled. Let me introduce you to the CEO of our companies. And AT&T, another big cell phone carrier, was the sponsor of the event. Let me introduce you to our sponsors. And I'm just meeting all these people, and I'm backstage. And I remember I was buzzing so much, and the adrenaline was flowing through my body so much that there was free drinks in the back. And I'm drinking alcohol, and I can't feel anything. I'm like, what is going on? I am like, I just couldn't believe what was happening and unfolding in front of me. So I get everybody's phone number, and I'm like, this is it. I did it. I get home, I call everyone, and nobody picks up the phone. I called the CEO, I called the chief of staff, I called the assistant, I called the hairdresser, I called everybody. No one's answering the phone. I'm like, should have never read The Alchemist. See, it got me in all this trouble. I went down here and done all this stuff, and now these people aren't even picking up my phone call. And so finally, on about the 10th day, I've been calling every day. I get a call from LA, and I'm like, oh, this is it. And it's the chief of staff to Puff, and she's like, Akeem, we're going to need you to stop harassing our employees. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, but we want to place an order for about 1,000 Flipsticks. We want you to come out to LA and give them away at our next event. I said, are you serious? He's like, yes. So I go out to LA. It was a whole conundrum just getting out there. And in LA, it just got even crazier. I'll kind of cut the story short, but I end up meeting Snoop Dogg in LA. Snoop Dogg ends up loving the Flipsticks. Then between Snoop and Puff, they end up calling Shark Tank. Then Shark Tank calls, and we end up getting on Shark Tank. And it just set up me on this incredible path of success and meeting all these incredible people and celebrities and getting my product in all these stores, you know, over 3,000 different retailers, distribution all across Europe. I mean, it was just incredible. And it all started, you know, from this belief in something that sounds impossible, right? Going on this journey in the place where no one would tell you to go to this conference, right? It doesn't make any sense. But the universe told me to go. And I follow the omens. And so I was like, yeah, this is where I need to be. And man, the more I do it, in those moments, like on the set of Shark Tank, as they were getting ready to open the doors, that was one of those moments where my vibrations were like on fire. And I just knew. I said, I only have one shot. There's no do-overs. This is live. It's recorded. Like, if I don't do it right, it'll never happen again. But I wasn't nervous. I had no fear because I knew I was right where I was supposed to be. And man, that is a great feeling, waking up knowing you are right where you're supposed to be. Even if it's not where you're, even if sometimes it doesn't mean you're where you want to be at, but you know in that moment you're right where you're supposed to be. And man, that gives me so much comfort and gratitude and inspiration to keep going, especially when it's hard. Because it, you know, as you know, like, just because you know the secret doesn't mean it's easy. It's still hard, but you know it's possible. And that changes everything.
See, that's amazing, because I worked out something, which is, if you've applied action to every thought, what would you now think to do? And what that means is, if you're up to date on doing everything you thought of, your energy is exactly where it's supposed to be. Because if it wasn't, you'd have a thought to move forward. You'd have a thought to go there. You're hungry, move there. If you're where you are and you've eaten, there's no thoughts, you're content. So I was applying action to every single thought in real time as it came into my head. For example, I'll be in bed. I get this thought to go to the casino. So I'll go, for fuck's sake, I put my clothes on, put my shoes on, I'll go in my car. Halfway down the motorway, I get the thought to go back. So I follow it and I go back. And then I get the thought to go back to the casino. So I go to the casino, and as I'm about to place my bet, I hear the thought, go to the other casino. And I'm just following each thought. Okay, then I got the thought to go to the petrol station. I had 20p on me, and I went there and it said stop at 17p. So I go in there and I buy 17p worth of fuel, and then I go out and then I find a fiver. And so I was following each thought, and I wanted to work out what happens when you do that. Right? If we're all operating on energy, and Snoop and P. Diddy are all in this energy field, if you hadn't applied action to every single thought along the way, that got you from Shark Tank, that feeling of throwing the thing in the air, and then the comedian saying, come out the back, and then you persisting and calling all of his employees for the person to say, stop annoying us, but come to LA. If you had not called 8 times and maybe called 4 times, it doesn't class as harassment. But 8 times does. So then she calls you. And then, so basically, I would max out every thought. If somebody's saying stop going on, I'd keep going on and keep going on and keep going on until they're literally about to punch me in the face. Then I know when to stop. But until then, I've got some energy still that hasn't been aligned, you know? If I'm going out and I'm asking 8 employees if I can have extra salt and pepper on my chips, and the chef told me no, I will keep asking everybody until there's no more staff left in the restaurant, right? And only then, when there's no more staff left to ask and the chef's gone home, then I'll give up. But you never, ever, ever give up until you've run out of all options. Because I look at snakes and ladders. Snakes and ladders have 100 blocks. You go up from 0 to 10, up the ladder, 10 to 20, up the ladder, 20 to 30. If you're at 8, there's still 2 more to go. That's equivalent to you calling up 4 times and going, hello, you gave me a number, why aren't you calling me? Hello, you gave me a number, why aren't you calling me? You're at 8, do it again. Hello, give me a number, number 9. Hello, give me a number, number 10. That's classed as harassment. Piss off. Now you've gone up the ladder. Now you're starting again from 10 to 20. And that's the come to, you know, the LA thing. And then you go down there, and then you go to Shark Tank. Everything is about catching up on your energy. If it doesn't feel right, you're not in alignment. And simply thinking and doing will only mean you're in the right place every single time. Because if you're not, you'll get this anxiety. The same as when you're in an office, you're getting this anxiety thinking something's not right. There's Snoop Dogg on the stage waiting for you, but that's like 50 knots away. That's 50 different sequences away. And if you go back all through these sequences, even the gay thing was necessary. Even the parents thing was necessary. Even the grandma thing was necessary. But all of these things are necessary, and they have to happen in synchronicity at the time that they do. Because each thing led you to the next. The Alchemist book led you to that. Then that led you to the other book. And it led you to the numbers online. Every single thing is in alignment. And so when I watch Abraham Hicks all the time, she's got this YouTube channel of 10-minute speeches that she does of audience members, and they're broken down. And I listen to it every night before bed. And it never gets boring. And you're always where you're supposed to be. You only fuck up if you don't listen to yourself. You only fuck up if you get this feeling and don't do it. If you get this feeling to stand up right now and show your flip thing and you don't do it, that's when you fucked up. But if you do it, it's the right thing at that time. And again, it takes a lot of experience to know when to trust that feeling. To know that if I get this feeling to stand up, it's right. And as you say, you weren't nervous because it was right. So why would you be nervous if it was right?
Man, that's powerful. Like, you know, I often get asked, like, especially since I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs and startups and stuff, you know, there's this, I don't know, in our culture, there's this thing of, you know, what's one regret you have? What's one thing you wish you had done differently? I always get asked this question. It's such a bizarre question to me. And I'm like, nothing. It's like, if I had done anything differently, I wouldn't be right here in front of you right now. I was like, I don't have any regrets. Like, the things that didn't go right, they were meant to not go right then. They a lot of times they saved me for something going much worse later. Like, I can look back and, like you said, that line with the knots, that thread through everything, all the things that happened, man, I look back with them and I look back and I'm like, wow, I couldn't see it then, but that was necessary. All the things were necessary. The good, the bad, the ugly, the great, the extraordinary, all of them. And it gives me, I just have so much appreciation for not giving it up. And, you know, speaking of not giving it up, so, you know, when you talk about having that anxiety, right, and feeling like you're not in that right space, for the past year with Flipstick, I have felt that way. And we're making more money than ever. You know, we got on Inc. magazine, top 50 fastest growing consumer product brands in the country. You know, we were, you know, from the outside looking in, it just looks incredible. But man, I was not feeling good. And I was trying so hard. You know, I'm meditating, I'm listening to Abraham, I'm rereading The Alchemist, all this stuff to try to be like, man, why don't I feel good? You know, like I'm trying to get to this place. And there was just a whisper, as it always starts. There was a whisper, and it was like the thing that I enjoyed doing the most, the opportunity that I got to do, you know, from doing Flipstick was speaking. I got the opportunity to tell people my story. And as I tell people these stories, then they're inspired to go do something because they're like, wow. And man, if I just follow these feelings and, you know, if I just don't give up, like I can do extraordinary things. And it just gave me so much joy to do it. But everybody kept telling me, my investors, my employees, oh, well, you know, that's great, but you can't really do that. You know, we got to focus on Flipstick. And, you know, once you sell Flipstick, then you can do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. And so, you know, as we started moving through things, you know, we raised some money, we're getting on all these TV networks and all this stuff's happening, but we weren't profitable. We were raising money, we're growing, but it wasn't a sustainable business. So we either have to raise more money or we have to sell. And, you know, I started looking, you know, at the options. I want to sell. Can I sell? Is there anyone that will buy it? You know, do I want to raise more money? Does that make sense for us to raise more money? We're just running into lots of problems, lots of resistance. And as you kind of see from my story, right, like it's one of like, not that there's not resistance, but there's a lot of magic happening, right? A lot of opportunities happen that are just extraordinary. And when I first started getting investors and stuff, we're landing all these retail deals and we're getting into Target, we're getting all this distribution. Everything's just like, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And it was like 2022. And then 2023 rolls around and we're still making more money, but it's just hard. And it doesn't feel like these are lining up. And it feels like we're hitting wall after wall after wall everywhere I go. And I'm not able to make any of these magical moments, these chance encounters. I'm going to places, I'm meeting people, but it's just not landing. And I don't know what's going on. And the times when I'm happiest are when I'm speaking to a university class, or I'm getting invited to a conference to come speak in front of a big audience. Like, that's where I'm finding my joy, but not in the day-to-day of running Flipstick, not anymore, not the excitement and the high vibrations I was feeling. And so, I eventually talked to our investors. I'm like, guys, I don't think this is going to, we all wanted it to go to the moon. We all wanted to make $100 million, but, I think we're going to make $5 million. I think this is probably as far as we're going to get. I had to come to the realization, this was late last year, that we weren't going to do it. We wasn't going to get there. And I was probably going to have to shut it all down or raise more money. And it didn't seem to make sense to go out and ask people for more money. And so, I remember I was in Philadelphia. I was getting ready to do our home shopping network, TV station, and you can buy stuff. And I was so sad and I was so upset, and I just felt like a failure. And I'm like, I can't believe I couldn't make this work. I had every opportunity. I was so upset and just feeling really down. And I get on TV and I'm still feeling terrible. And I do my segment and we end up selling $100,000 in 8 minutes. And I still felt bad. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, 6, 7 years ago, it took you 3 years to make $100,000 in this business. You just made it in 8 minutes. That is an incredible journey, an incredible trajectory. And yes, you may not be Jeff Bezos, but you did something that would have been impossible to the old version of you. And you did it. It was incredible. And more importantly, when you tell people the story, they think they can do it too. And so earlier last year, I had gone to this competition, this speaking competition run by this guy, Grant Cardone, who's a big real estate guy and motivational speaker. And I ended up getting into the finals for that. So I'm about to go do that in Miami. And all these things are starting to come into place. I'll be speaking at this big conference called South by Southwest this year. All these things were coming into place. And I had felt for a while and heard that voice say, like, this chapter's over. I want you to go do something else now. But it was very hard. I just felt like giving up. And so I couldn't bring myself to it for a long time. But it felt like the universe, felt like God was like, hey, look, I'm ready for the next chapter. Now you can listen to me now. You can listen to me when I make it hurt. But I'm pushing you into the next chapter. And he had to push me because I'm hard-headed sometimes. And I remember, man, I was on my phone. And this guy who I had not talked to in years, right? I had met him like 1 or 2 times. I get a text from him. I don't have any text from this guy. He gives me a text. And literally on the text, it says, you must go mentor. And I get chills. And I text him back. I'm like, did you mean to text me? And he was like, oh, no, I'm sorry. That was meant for someone else. And I texted him back. I said, it may not have been meant for me, but it was meant for me, if you know what I'm saying.
I got the message,
And
motherfucker.
I was like, damn, now I have to get a text. I really don't listen well. But man, it makes me grateful because I'm like, I could always count on the universe to be like, all right, he's just not listening. I got to make it real plain and simple for him. I'm going to have to put a second book on the counter because he's not listening to me trying to tell him what I want him to do. And it was one of those moments where it was very scary for me to step out on faith once again, but it was like I was stagnant and I wasn't where I was supposed to be anymore. For a long time, that is where I was supposed to be, but now it's time for something else. And I was doing an interview the other day, and this guy told me he was a big what do you call it? Agent for NFL players. So, he's, doing contracts and all this kind of stuff. He'd done over $1 billion in NFL contracts. And, I'm telling him my story, and he's like, man, dude, it's like, my audience is a lot of football players, athletes. He's like, you're not an athlete, but you don't know how important your story is for the people who are going to listen to this. He's like, you don't know. It's like, he's like, the easiest thing I've ever done is getting NFL players $1 billion in contracts. The hardest thing I've ever done is getting them to leave the NFL. And what is it like when you have to take a transition in your life and do something else? And it breaks almost all of them. It's so hard when you've been told you're this, you're this, you're this. You people introduce you as their Patriot, as their Bronco. Like, you are a footballer, and then you're not. And how do you transition that? He's like, it's so hard for me to help people with that. It's one of the most difficult tasks I have as an agent. And he's like, and you just laid it out. And so as I was going through this new chapter, for the first time in my life, when I did it after college, and when I did it going into Flipstick, like when I first started Flipstick, I didn't even tell anyone I was starting Flipstick because I didn't want them to think I was starting something else after having just started a company. I've always been afraid to tell people, right, when I'm starting over. It's very hard. It's easy to tell them once it looks good and shiny on the outside, but it's hard to tell them in the moment. It's hard to speak it. And for the first time, I did that because I was like, I've done this before. I've been here before. I'm on a much higher level than I did it before, but I'm like, if I did it those other 3 times, I can do it again. I know the blueprint. I know the secret. And I felt like, man, once I actually, on Christmas Day, I made a post on our Instagram. It was like, hey guys, we're not ordering any more Flipsticks. Get them while you can, blah, blah, blah. And I was so nervous. My investors were like, you don't have to tell people, Akeem, that we don't have to say anything. We could just keep it hush hush. And I'm like, no, because it's time for me to move into my next chapter. And I want everyone to know, because how can I get people into my vortex if nobody knows that I'm moving in a new direction and into a new vortex? They can't join it if they don't know. And so I can't be a secret. There can't be any secrets here. And man, once I made that decision, and as we moved into the new year, once again, for the first time in a while, I felt like, wow, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Those synchronicities started lining up, and now they weren't forced. Like, I had been forcing it, like, oh, I'm just trying to get in the right mindset. If I just get in the right mindset, this will all work. But when you're pushed in another direction, it's like, hey, it's time. And then all of a sudden, boom, just like that, the omens start showing up, the signs start showing up. Oh, you're a speaker? Let me introduce you to this person. Oh, I need you to come here. And then all of a sudden, oh, you need to get on podcast? Let me show you. That's how I found you. Let me introduce you to this guy. He has this podcast discovery engine with AI. And I'm like, oh, really? I've done probably in my lifetime of doing Flipstick. If I take all the podcasts, TV shows, interviews, and wrap them all up, I've probably booked the same amount in the past 3 weeks that I booked in the past 4 years. And it was because I met one person. And it's one of those things where it's just like, when you're on the right path, you're on the right path. And then you're excited and you're ready to keep going. But when you're on the wrong path, and the universe, when God's trying to tell you, like, hey, I got something else for you now, go somewhere else. It's very hard to listen. And we don't always trust it. I know I didn't. And man, I want as many people as I can to know, like, follow the intuition. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. It won't make sense to everybody else. But when it's right, just like you talked about, Oliver, people would have been like, what do you mean you went to the gas station and then you went to the casino, and you left the casino, and then you went to another casino, and then you found some money on the ground? But it's like, that's how it happens, right? It doesn't make any sense. It only makes sense because you know the ending. So since you know the ending, you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's it. But it doesn't make sense in the moment. And most people wouldn't get it. But when you do it, man, it's incredible.
Right, we're going to stop this here, and I'm going to speak to you afterwards. If there's one thing that you can tell people, if you'd one day to live, what would it be?
Don't give up too soon. So many people give up on their dreams or their aspirations too soon. When you first start a journey, when you first start to get into your purpose, it's easy, right? You get that high and you're motivated and it's exciting. But then it gets hard, and you gotta move through that difficulty, and you don't want to give up too soon. But when it's time to move on, move on. But when it's not time to move on and it's just time to overcome, like overcome and keep going, because it's meant for you. You just gotta make 10 calls and not 4, right? Sometimes you gotta harass.
And anything you want to plug before we end?
Well, listen, if people want to follow me or they're interested in seeing more about my journey and what I have next, I have an amazing new show with Carvette that I'm doing, which is super exciting. They can follow me at Akeem Shannon, Akeem Shannon, Shannon, on all social media channels. And they can visit my website at AkeemShannon.com. And if they want a flipstick, we still have a few more left, and they can get those at getflipstick.com.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please remember to subscribe, turn the bell notifications on, like the episode, and comment below. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's YesKingOliver. Take a look at the other videos to your side. And if you just want to listen to this podcast, you can do so on Apple and Spotify and most other platforms by going to talkwitholiver.com.